Welcome to Primetime Mitch, and it's a Freddy Drench video today. I am very happy to be joined by two guests. That's a nice little first for the channel. Lito Velasco, we had a great chat a few months ago about your work, and the link is below for anyone that hasn't had a chance to see that yet. Fine composer and actor and cosplayer. And speaking of cosplay, I am delighted to welcome Elm Street scholar Diandra Lazor to the channel. You may know her from her fabulous social media as Sassy Sledgehammer. I'm very happy right now. I've got a few things to ask, but first of all, whoever first, how are you today?
I'm super. Thank you for having me.
I'm doing well.
I knew you'd be doing well, Lito. Basically, it's just a casual chat because this is going to be the week when I do my Dream Warriors watch along. I started this channel with the first Nightmare movie, and I've done the second, so this is one of my absolute favorites. So I thought I would give a bit of a double whammy for the channel for the week. Diandra, I've seen your superb work in fan movies in Don't Fall Asleep, and I want to ask you, from a fan's perspective, when you get into a franchise like this, how quickly do you sort of transition, or do you really, from, oh my God, I love this, to, oh my God, I want to do something with this?
I think honestly for me it happened pretty quickly because I started doing stuff in like 2007 or something like that when I had watched the movie. I was a late bloomer, so it was like basically that Halloween I decided I wanted to cosplay as Nancy, and then from there I started to like set up my little digital camera and try to take photos and post them online as like stage. I don't even know what I was going for. I didn't really know what cosplay was. I just wanted to kind of like give off the Nightmare on Elm Street vibe, and I wanted to keep like creating that sort of stuff. And then shortly after that, I created all of my social media accounts at the time, which was pretty much just Facebook, and was trying to do something with cosplay. So for me, it was like almost immediate because I've always expressed my love for something by creating something around it. So yeah, it was like basically within the same year.
Well, I heard as well that you were, the first one you watched was Freddy's Dead.
Yeah.
Which I think is great because well, I think I remember, Lito, we had a brief discussion about this, but that's got sentimental value to me because it's the first VHS horror that my parents bought for me when they finally gave in and went, "We'll just let him do it." And so I do have a feeling for that movie. I have watched everything the wrong way around, but I guess just if you could briefly run down, and this probably goes for you too, Lito, because I don't actually know if I asked you this, but your first introduction to really going deep into Freddy once you'd seen Freddy's Dead.
I think it might have been like on a week by week basis of my dad took me to get Freddy's Dead. I didn't know what I was going to pick out at the time. I just knew I wanted a nightmare movie, and I don't even remember what it was. I don't know if it was the cover or if it was the only one that was available at the time, but I just decided to pick that one out, watched it like constantly over the next few days that I had the rental. And then my dad took me back the following week because that's when it was like pizza and pick out a movie and stuff like that. And I just got, I want to say the fourth may have been Freddy versus Jason after that, because it was all out of order. And then the fourth one, but it was like week after week. I was just kind of watching them and just wanting to know more. And then I think maybe like couple months in, I joined a forum on Nightmare on Elm Street films.com when I met a bunch of other Nightmare on Elm Street fans. But it was kind of like, I think I may have watched all of them before I really joined. And that was just kind of like week after week, pretty consecutively, because I go pretty hard into something if I really, really like it, obviously.
Yeah, I saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street. It was I'm pretty sure that someone in my family rented it. I'm almost positive. And we watched it, and I was terrified, but also completely fascinated and enamored. And that was in spring 1985, because it was when it first came out to VHS. I remember seeing the cardboard cutout in the video store and everything and being like, what's going on with that girl? And why is that thing above her head? You know, just, and so once I saw this, the first film, the second film came out in theaters later that fall. And I remember my dad and I went to see Jewel of the Nile, but Elm Street 2 was playing in the same Cineplex. And when we were walking out, we heard people talking about Elm Street 2. And I was just like, oh, I got to see that as soon as I can. But my parents wouldn't take me. So I kind of caught everything on VHS after the fact until part 4 came out. That was the first one that I saw in theaters. But I had to take myself to see it because my parents were not having any of that. And so my friends and I got on our BMX bikes and we rode to the local Cineplex, which was about 3 miles away, and snuck into Elm Street 4. We bought tickets to whatever film was playing on the other screen because it was
the way to do
two-screen theater. And we snuck, you know, we crawled on all fours past the concession stand and snuck into the Elm Street 4 screening. And then I saw all of them in the theater, you know, on opening weekend from that point on.
So you're quite you're the earliest bloomer. I mean, I was 1994, like the back end of 94, because I was having a really childish fight with a friend, as I would be at age 8. And his sister wanted us to stop fighting, and she went, what if I let you watch a horror film? No one's around. And it was Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is absolutely up there with my favorites. And I just, when I watched that, I was absolutely fascinated by the concept. And I think the thing that dragged me, and this leads me into a question here, is in like, what was it about the franchise that grips you? To me, it was the uniqueness of the kids, because I think it was really important that they were unique. They had their own hobbies, interests, quirks, that kind of thing, because then you can tailor the dreams to really get to them. What was sort of, Diandra, what was your sort of reasoning for really, really tagging on to Nightmare on Elm Street like you did?
Let's see. I would love to say, I mean, Nancy really solidified it all for me because she seemed like somebody who was very similar to me. And given that I saw Freddy's Dead first, and being that I was somebody from Ohio, I watched it and was like, oh my God, it's here. And so my kind of initial thing that there was just something about Freddy and the creativity of everything. And there was this just like the humor with the scariness of him, and his look was so unique. And I loved that he talked, and I loved that the dream sequences were really creative, because at first, before I really discovered Nancy, I was really into like Maggie, and then went all the way, you know, to Alice before I actually made my way to the first, and then the third, and then New Nightmare. And so I too really just liked the kids. I liked the strength. I liked how relatable they were. And I've always really liked strong characters. So the Final Girls was kind of a new concept to me because I didn't grow up a horror fan. I watched it, but I didn't really know about that. And so I just found that to be really, really interesting. But I think it was the mix of the creativity. And then when it hit Nancy, then it was the similarity. And then as I got more into the franchise, it was then discovering like the depth of each movie, that it's always like some sort of theme that represents things that like kids go through when they grow up, or with all the energy that Wes put into the first movie with the psychology inspirations. And then of course, New Nightmare is my favorite, and I just like lost it. I call it the most professional fan film ever made because it's official, but it is like a really cool concept of like, what if, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has ever done this, but what if the people who actually made the movie had to face the thing that came out of the movie? I was like, this is just such an interesting concept. So yeah, it just kind of built and built and built and really solidified over the years. And yeah, I just think it's just a fun franchise, fun, interesting franchise. And of course, you know, Freddy, I mean, he's such a unique character compared to pretty much every other slasher out there.
I've got to say, I was really glad as a kid to watch Wes Craven's New Nightmare first, because it was toying with reality. It made it more real to me as a kid, and my imagination just went crazy. I mean, I'm sorry to say, and I think I've heard you say something like this, Lito, before. I tried to make a glove of my own, And it amazed me that you said the exact thing that I did with the toilet rolls, and you cut out the shapes of the fingers. That's exactly what I did, but I ended up trying to attach my mum and dad's knives to the end, like Dylan does. So yeah, that was a dark point. I've got to ask. I've never told anybody that. I've got to ask you, Diandra. But people say that there's like you can have a spirit animal. I'm guessing Nancy is your spirit human.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I could close my eyes and your voice sounds very similar. And I think it was made for the role, it seems. You've referenced your efforts at getting Nancy recognised more. So I've seen the documentary as well. The Nancy documentary is fantastic. Do you feel in a way that she represents strong people and that your fight is sort of for them as well in general?
Yeah, I think so, because I'd always felt left out in my life, and I never really felt like I could stand up to people. Well, I kind of did, because even before I became a horror fan, I remember there was like the great cheerleading incident of my middle school where there was just this disagreement between these really catty people and myself. And they were like, we're going to keep, it was like passing the torch between the 8th graders who were about to go into high school, which was my grade, and then the 7th graders. And they were like, they can only do this, like this part. And I just said, hey, everybody, we're going to do this together. And then it just resulted in this big blowout where we had to have a huge intervention with like a bunch of the teachers at the school. And it was just this big thing. And so, but I also felt like such an outcast, and I could never really get comfortable because my interests were so unique, and I was the nerdy kid who always had some kind of obsession. And so when I saw Nancy and that, it just felt like she was the version of me that I wanted to be, but somebody that I shared similarities with. But then I go out and I'm like, there's so much that you could learn from her character about embodying strength. And she is just like your next door neighbor. And it kind of sends the message that anybody could find the strength to overcome their fears. And for me, I've always wanted to like be like, believe in yourself and go after what you want and don't let anybody pick on you, and find the strength. And so yeah, I think there was the kind of mix of like, she saved myself, but I also wanted to embody her to like help, like encourage other people to have strength, because I didn't really have anybody to do that for me except for Nancy.
Well, I could tell, particularly like in the Fredheads documentary, I just loved how much you were flying the flag for her. While I'm on the subject of that, both of you, what makes a Fredhead?
Wow. I don't know if there's any one particular thing that defines it, honestly. I mean, that's an interesting question, because it kind of opens the gateway to discuss gatekeeping, which is something that I absolutely hate, and I'm so tired of people doing it. I'm so tired of seeing online the real fans and this and that and the other, and it's like, you, like, it doesn't matter when you came to this fandom. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you collect. It doesn't matter if you own all the films. If you're a fan of something, you're a fan. Like, I'm so tired of people trying to define what is an actual diehard fan. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you have a passion for this stuff, then you are a Fredhead. And I think that's what defines a Fredhead. Someone that loves the films in a way that it becomes something that defines you to a degree. And, I think if you talk about it in that sense, when you're a kid in school, maybe that is disturbing to some people, because I know that I've been wearing shirts like this since 1986, probably. And, that always made the authority figures a little uncomfortable, because, they associate it with darkness. But what they don't understand is all these things that Diandra's been touching on, is that kids gain strength from these films because of the lessons that are being taught, the subtext that is imbued throughout the film. Whether they realize it or not, it is registering in them to some degree. And I think that's a huge part of why people are Fredheads. So that would be my answer. If you love it and it defines you to a degree in whatever way that is. I mean, even if you identify Freddie with someone in your life that you can't overcome, but you're trying, or someone that has always kind of set you on edge or made you tense or maybe caused you trauma, and you're trying to find the strength as you grow up to kind of stand up and be your own person and say, no more bullshit, you know? So that's how I would define it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I think too.
It's a strength and passion thing. And yeah, that's the best answer I could have asked for. Thank you very much for that.
All right, see you later.
Yeah, but I think that's what I've found, certainly from just the horror community in general, because I'm obviously late to this, not as a fan, but as a creator. I started my YouTube channel like just over a year ago, and this is something brand new for me. And I've found that this is the best community I've ever been a part of, because there is something for everybody. And that, what you've just described, I think can apply to a lot of horror, not just Freddy, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. And I think a lot of Nightmare fans, you know, we're so invested in our little Nightmare world that we're like, this fandom is something different. But, you know, because everybody always I feel like people also talk about the Halloween fandom, which Lito would know very well because he's a huge Halloween fan. But everyone's always like, oh, the Halloween fans are always fighting with each other. And so I've like asked the world, like, is it true? Is it just us, or is it everybody? I mean, they had the Evil Dead documentary, The Deadites, which it seems was a very similar community. And people have talked about how the Evil Dead fans are pretty cool. The Texas Chainsaw fans are pretty cool. So I think it can be said for a lot of horror fandom as well, of just like why people like horror and just kind of like how people view a community and how people view it as like affecting their life. And I also think that it's really interesting because everybody's very unique, but we all as humans kind of share this similar thread of like thoughts and how we are impacted by things and how we look at things. And so I just feel like it's not just the Fredheads. I think that this sort of sentiment does in fact exist in the broader horror community.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on what she said, there is a basic structure to human psychology, and there's a basic structure to the human psyche. And I think that's one of the reasons why horror works so well for the people that latch onto it. Is there's something in every one of these franchises that we all have really identified with in whatever way it is. And when you look at the examples that we're talking about, like the final girl and the kids and the heroes and the villain and, you know, what's happening, those are all archetypes of storytelling that go back, you know, thousands of years. And it's registering on those levels because, again, we are all inheriting that DNA to some degree, whether we want to admit it or not. But there's something so unique about the way it is laid out in horror, and the people that really glom onto it, there's a reason for that. You know, you could probably speak to a therapist about it for a long while and get to the true roots of it. But basically, it's calling to us because it gives us strength. I really do go back to some of the things Wes said every time. We have to watch these films. We have to watch these nightmares on the screen because they help us deal with the horrors of the real world. Yeah, really. And every single person that is a horror fanatic, I guess I would say, if you sit down and talk to them, you're probably going to find that 90% would be my guess have a sort of shared psyche in a way, in terms of something from their past, some sort of obstacle, some sort of struggle. And that was very clear in Fredheads. And I think it's important to make people realize and to make people remember that, because everybody has that. Even if they're not a horror fanatic, everybody has something that they're struggling with. And maybe they find strength through Spider-Man or, you know, whatever they find it in, whatever they love. We're all searching for that. We just happen to find it in this.
Well, I'd love to get a quick perspective on Don't Fall Asleep, because I wanted to know, Diandra, I imagine it's fairly nerve-wracking to act as Nancy, to be Heather Langenkamp's character that she'd done so brilliantly. But did you feel like you were almost not acting because you lived through her and you channel her so much?
No. I mean, I felt like I was really scared because that's how everybody had perceived me for so long, of like, Diandra is the Nancy girl and she knows Nancy so well and she cosplays as Nancy and she talks about Nancy. Like, what if I get up there and I do, you know, my version of like my Nancy with hers? And everybody's like, oh, she doesn't fucking understand this character at all. Like, that was so scary to me. And I was terrified that I was not going to do her justice. So there was just that pressure of everybody expecting something. And when everybody has expectations, you're like, will I meet them or will I fall flat on my face? So that kind of fear was always.
Well, I wondered actually, because Lito, I know you scored that film beautifully. Is there the same? I know you're sort of more experienced than Diandra would have with acting at that point, but do you feel that same pressure when you're taking the original score and sort of modifying it?
Yeah. I mean, I feel that pressure whenever I do anything creative in any sense, acting, composing, filmmaking, whatever it is. I feel a responsibility that creates a pressure it's a good pressure. It's a good motivator, but it's a pressure. It's a kind of anxiety. And I just try to look at it as, I'm feeling this because I understand the weight of the importance of this. I'm feeling this because I know that this, if it means this much to me, it means this much to millions of other people, if not more, you know, because there are people that at this point in my life, I'm at the age where I can't remember everything that I used to remember about A Nightmare on Elm Street. So there are people that are like really in it at the right time of their life, that they're just this computer of facts and knowledge. And I just imagined that. I just imagined them. And, you know, I wanted to touch on you talking to Diandra about her performance. I could tell when I watched the finished film, and I knew this was going to be the case because I knew her already to a degree, but I could tell that she was feeling the same sense of responsibility, the same sense of duty, and the same sense of, I have to, you know, take this seriously, because I've seen fan films where they're playing characters that, you know, and it's like, wow, they are really phoning this shit in. But that wasn't the case with her at all. And, you know, like, one of the great honors of writing the music for that film was I got to give Nancy a theme. And it was the first time Nancy ever had a theme composed for her, which, coming from the way I score films, I was just like, what the is that about? Like, how has no one ever written a theme for this character?
If anyone deserved one, it was her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she has what I would say is a musical motif in New Nightmare, but to me that's more Heather than Nancy, you know. So when I finally did get to do it, it was like, you can't this up. Like you really have to think about this. And what I ended up coming up with was fueled not just through the character, but through Diandra's performance and through what I felt coming through her acting, you know, her love and her sense of this is a hero for the ages. So she made my job a lot easier.
Oh, thanks, Lito.
If you have a passion for it, that can be your driving force. You don't always have to have the experience or the knowledge. You can just, as long as the love's there, you're going to give a performance that's befitting.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. Yeah. I know a lot of people are like the acting, but we were like, let's make it as 80s as possible. Like, you know, I'm going to say it, I love Heather, but you watch some of her stuff and you're like, she's definitely like a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, hasn't done much. So we didn't want to like go too far beyond that. And to be honest, you know, it was our first like time ever making anything really together. And so did we have the most, and we had the worst time on set with just like some of the locations and the things that they promised us, like for lighting, and we're like, all right, who's got like a flashlight, who's got a phone light, because the lights that we brought are like not working because they didn't turn on the power to these outlets. And so it was just a labor of love. And I do want to say a couple of things about Lito's score. First, I love the theme of Nancy because it is like strength and beauty, and there's some sadness. But one of my favorite moments is the very end when he brings in the subtle Dream Warriors theme with the phone call. I remember, like, I know that for several of us who worked on it, that's like one of our favorite moments of the entire movie, because that was just, we were just like, oh, this is so smart, it's so good, everybody's gonna love it. And yeah, given that, you know, Lito, and I'm always amazed by people who could do scores, because I wouldn't even know how to do like a progression of what it should feel like. Like, it just seems way too complicated for me. So it is definitely a talent that only certain kinds of people possess. And I guess some people could probably learn it, but it doesn't seem like a skill that's easily like acquired.
It's kind of why I'm interviewing a lot of composers recently. Before I sort of come to a conclusion, I just want to ask a couple of sort of, what's the word, frivolous questions. Diandra, I know, am I right in saying, because I've listened to a lot of your interviews before, but were you a fan of the R.L. Stine books?
Yes.
Can I ask what your favorite was?
Well, it's actually, I believe it was written by him though, but because it's Fear Street, it's the betrayal, and it has like this brunette on the front and like fire behind her, and it was just about, from what I remember, just a story about a couple witches and being burned alive, and that like whole concept scared me. I remember being in grade school, and I think my grandparents might have like picked me up from school, but they had to get some groceries. And I was just like sitting, they were like, do you want to come in? I was like, no. And I'm just reading this book and I'm so enamored by it. I don't know what it was about it. I think it might have been just the way that he brought about the fear in it, and just the concept of being burned alive, and the way that he described it sounded so terrifying that I was like, I just don't remember the details of it, but that's why I bought it, because I wanted to reread it and kind of see, like, refresh my brain about it, because that really, really scared me. But then there were some of the Goosebumps books, like, you know, like,
The Haunted Mask.
Gosh,
my
yes,
favorite,
the haunted, yeah. And you'll have to forgive me because I don't remember all of the like names of it, but like the one with the professor when he was like eating the insects and stuff, like, just, you know, I could go off of covers alone, but yeah, those were like the only books that I wanted to rent from the library. That, and then some Stephen King books like Rose Red, I remember reading. I just really liked scary books before I was even actually a horror fan. So I guess I've been a horror fan longer than I've given myself credit for.
R.L. Stine was sort of the introduction to a lot of young people, because he had levels. Like Goosebumps was sort of the softer, and then it was Point Horror, which was sort of a little bit above it. Because my favorite of his, I believe, was the Babysitter, which was a Point Horror book, and then obviously I think Fear Street came after that, and then he sort of went up in levels. He almost got you through childhood in horror, and then sort of prepared you for what was coming. So yeah, Lito, are you familiar?
Well, I was going to say, I think this is beyond my time. I was reading different horror books when I was a kid, so I was reading more of the Stephen King stuff, Salem's Lot and The Shining and all that kind of stuff, and also just a lot of behind the scenes books, you know, about the Universal monsters and monster makeup and that kind of thing.
I've got all those books now. I was so late to behind the scenes books, but now the shelf is absolutely full of them. This curiosity,
and there are so many really good ones now. So,
and my final question, and this, I really want to know this so much. Have you ever been tempted to get a permanent grey streak in your hair?
Well, actually, when let's see, starting in 2011, and when I made Don't Fall Asleep, the streak in my hair was in fact real. We just enhanced it. So when I first went to meet Heather at Days of the Dead in 2011, which is the first time I met Lito in person, I had gone to the stylist and I was like, I would like a gray streak in my hair, please. And then I had it in my hair pretty much all throughout college. And people would be like, there was some artist, her name was like Christina something. She did a bunch of music for, I think, like some of the Twilight movies. And they were like, is it because of her? And I was like, no, it's because of Nancy Thompson. Like, but yeah, no, I did have it. And a couple years ago, my hair went, like, I brought it back to dark and then I put the streaks in it again. And I have been thinking about that. Like, if I ever go back to brunette or dark, like getting the streak in, because it is just like, so it looks cool, but it's also a nice homage.
I think it's like a tattoo almost, a bit like your thorn tattoo you've got on the wrist, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I really wanted to know that, because I actually think it does look really cool as a style in general. But yeah, that's me. I mean, what do I know? I might do it myself if I could get more at the front. But I may well do, though. I don't think I make a very good Nancy. I don't think the beard and the moustache.
Don't say that.
Does there any
Believe in yourself.
We are all Nancy.
Yeah, we are. Yes.
Exactly.
So, guys, thank you very much. I hope I didn't badger you with too many questions. I've really enjoyed having you both on, and it's going to make my Freddy week a lot more sort of varied and fun to have this video on the channel. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. So I'm really glad that we could make this work, and thank you to Lito for helping to get me on board, and for, you know, you wanting to have me. And these were great questions, so I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mitch. And I guess real quick, what's everyone's favorite scene from Dream Warriors, since he's gonna watch it?
Yeah. Let me think. It's definitely not the end, that's for sure.
Oh God, no.
Oh, God.
I think my favorite scene is just the opening. I love the opening nightmare. When I saw it when I was a kid, I remember seeing Freddy come around that corner.
Yes.
Kind of slow-mo. I mean, like, I'm sure I shit my pants.
That's actually mine, but more so when the little girl says Freddy's home. That really frightened me when I was younger. So that I'm sharing that one.
Freddy's home.
I'm gonna probably say it's the moment that Nancy makes her return with the "Never Sleep Again" line delivery.
That's a
Because
close
for me,
second.
that's just such a really big cheer. I was like, is it one of the fight scenes when she's got the pink bat wing shirt on? I don't know. Those are great, but like that moment in particular is one when I'm like, yeah, that's like a big cheer moment. So that would be my favorite.
Never sleep again.
I'm a wrestling fan, so I always look at that moment when she appears in the doorway as somebody's music coming on when they've been gone for a long time. So yeah, that's a great scene.
I totally get that. I have been to wrestling matches and like the Undertaker showed up and everyone was like, oh man. Yeah, very cool.
Well, that's a great ending to the video. Thank you, guys, and I look forward to watching this movie. I've got a brand new shirt to put on during it. I'm really buzzing for it. So thank you for contributing to my week, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please smash a like down below and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell for more videos like this in the future. I've appreciated your time. I've appreciated Lito's time and Diandra's time. From Primetime Mitch, see you soon, everybody.